Hello and welcome back to the Eternal Witnesses podcast, your favorite podcast for competitive, modern, legacy, and vintage Magic the Gathering. As always, I am Mark Mara, and I am here with the birdless man himself, Michael Mapson. Say hi, Mapson.
That's me. I actually got to play Nadu yesterday in a constructed format. It was glorious.
Constructed formats.
I played Canadian Highlander for the first time.
Loosely constructed.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
You do get to choose your cards in that format, yeah, but I guess your options for the bird are limited. It's that or vintage. And we're also joined by the Gilded Drake, Dan Atkins. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
It's a man that likes to blink. Let me tell you that. There's one thing I know about Dan. He likes to blink things. All right. So you may have noticed that we haven't had an episode in a little while. Sorry about that, everybody. Basically, the short version is that I have not been loving Magic lately. I haven't really played a whole lot since basically RC Las Vegas. And even before that, I'd only played paper a couple times. In the previous year, just, a lot of things, the Spider-Man set and some of the other universes beyond decisions. Not something I've loved, this year having more universes beyond sets than in universe as well. It's just not any one specific thing. It's just a bit of an accumulation for me. And so it didn't feel right to come on here, even though I love doing the podcast and hanging out with Mapson and the rest of the homies that we have on as guests. Didn't really feel right to come on and pretend like I was paying attention to Magic or that I knew what I was talking about. And so we just kind of didn't do any episodes for a while because didn't really want to. And now passing the torch over to Dan to keep things going with Mapson. So Dan, why don't you say hi and introduce yourself to the crowd?
Yeah, my name's Dan. I've been playing Magic since around 2009, 2010. Original Zendikar block was when I got into it, which was a great time. Yeah, and thanks for introducing me, Mark. We're definitely going to have you back. It's going to be great. Yeah, so been playing Magic since around that time. Originally just, learned on the basement or the bedroom floor of my buddy Mike's house, with just us, attacking and blocking, but not realizing that when you attack, you have to tap, so you can't block with him, because at first we're like, oh, that's way too complicated. That makes, you have to do math to figure out, when you attack and when you block. And it's like, no. Everything can attack, everything can block. It was a great time. But then we slowly, went to, F&M and got, smashed by some local grinders and, built our way up. So since then, I've played a few different decks. I got into Legacy probably 2012-ish. I played Maverick for a long time, which was great. I still love that deck. Still have a love for Knight of the Reliquary, which I know is shared on this pod here. And then slowly picked up a few different blue duels. Got into Food Chain and Allurin for a little while. Continued the trend of just playing some creatures. Occasionally they would combo off, but mostly just value. Big fan of value. And then a few different things. Played Oko for a little while just because it was so broken. But lately, in the past few years, I've been playing a lot of Espervile. I'm just a big fan of Gilded Drake, especially when it's paired with Felia. Being able to steal my opponent's creatures. It creates a lot of fun stories, whether it's stealing a Merit Lage, which I'm sure I've done against you, Mapson, or
I don't think you have.
I've tried to at least. Maybe it was not successful, but a few different things like that, which we'll get into it. But the Allurin decks that are popping up now, huge fan. Really, it's bringing back a lot of memories of playing, 4 mana green enchantments that just create value. In this case, this one wins a little bit quicker, but still a big fan of it. So
yeah, we're definitely going to get into that deck.
Yeah.
But yeah, so first, thanks for joining. I'm obviously sad to see Mark go. For the listeners, he already got off this episode. I know the video viewers can see that, but don't worry if anybody's like, well, they had a fight or whatever. No, we still talk literally every day. But I am excited to have my good friend Dan on. Dan and I do not talk every day yet, but
not yet.
Who knows?
Or what we do,
No.
It's mostly about music or something. Or do you see this concert coming up? We should totally go.
Which I do have a list of 5 concerts I want to ask you about.
I'm ready for it.
I'm pretty sure you're going to say no to all of them, but I'm going to ask anyways.
Ask. Yeah.
No, but so Dan and I have been good friends for a while. We talk a lot. There was a few different people I considered asking to join me, and a few people who have asked to come on. So if you wanted to maybe replace Mark and you didn't, it's nothing personal. Feel free to ask me about it, and I can elaborate on my choices. But for now, we're sticking with Dan. May add somebody later, who knows? But yeah, excited to keep things going, excited to get back to this, and excited to stop answering questions about, are you guys going to record more? What happened? When was the last episode? I haven't seen you guys in a while, which is actually really cool that people care, but I was getting asked every weekend.
Yeah, there you go. Now you have a response. Here we are. Righty.
Okay, so this weekend was the showcase challenges for both Modern and Legacy. So I thought that would be a good place to start, and just kind of go over our thoughts on those events. Do you want to start with Modern or Legacy?
Let's start with Legacy. So I, as a Aether Vial gamer, huge fan of this weekend. There is, in the Legacy showcase, a Mono White Death and Taxes one, which is awesome. Two other challenges that happened, Death and Taxes one, those were the black-white variants. So I'm just ecstatic. So we can go into the results a little bit there.
Yeah, the winning list is so funny because Jamie, who has been streaming a lot with Energy and Death and Taxes, we're in a Discord together, and he posted his Mono White Death and Taxes list, and XJ Cloud was like, "No, that's cap. Like you just hate the mana, like whatever, And then a day later, this wins the showcase challenge. And Jamie's just justified.
That is definitely a recurring theme in the Death and Taxes Discord of people posting either red white or black white, which are kind of the known best two variants. And then as soon as somebody posted mono white, they're like, nah, get out of here. You're trying to play a deck that's 10 years old or 5 years old. But here we see Thalia making a return. There's 4, it still has the Thalia stuff. Lauren is coming back, which is great, especially as you're seeing a lot more Omniscience or Beam or Allurin for White Orchid Phantom to really punish that. I love that combination of White Orchid Phantom and the 4 Ghost Quarters and 4 Wastelands. So really taking advantage of that mono-colored mana base. But the 4 Clarion Conquerors in this deck, that is aggressive.
Yeah, that is a statement. And I'm not really sure what exactly the statement it's making is, but I know it is a statement. So you play a lot more of these kinds of decks than I do. Why do you think somebody would lean mono white? Why the 4 Clarion Conquerors in the main?
Right. So I know historically when Nadu was big, last Eternal Weekend, the end of last year, I was playing 4 Clarion Conquerors in my sideboard because there was the Mystic Forge matchups, the Nadu matchups where it was a hammer that you brought in. And it was kind of carrying you through those. But now you don't see Nadu, but even Mystic Forge we're not seeing much of either. But it still has a lot of utility, even if it's not ending the game on the spot like it used. It still stops things like Kaito. It stops things like a flip Tamio you just don't care about anymore. Even the clues that it generates are really nice to limit your blue-black opponent from getting that incremental advantage, which is really great. And then obviously there's if you do end up playing against a one-ring deck, it's really good there, or maybe the mono-red, which I think did pretty well last weekend. So it can be good at shutting off their mana as well as, the one ring. So it's really good at, once you get a little bit advantage there, keeping your opponent down and not letting them kind of build their way back in, which is, plus it's just a 3/3 flyer. And sometimes just a 3/3 flyer is enough to end the game pretty quick, which, brings me to another card, the Canoptic Scarab Swarm in this deck. That's a card I'm a huge fan of. It's, when you just look at it, it's it's a 4 mana, what is it, a 1/1? And it maybe makes a few 1/1s, you don't think about it a lot. But if you play that turn 6, turn 7, generate 5 or 6 1/1s, that ends the game really fast, especially if you're able to flicker, exile your graveyard, then exile your opponent's graveyard. It really ends the game. And Canoptic Scarab Swarm, if people aren't familiar, is a 4 mana 1/1 flying artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you exile target player's graveyard. For each artifact or land card exiled this way, create a 1/1 insect artifact creature with flying, which typically you'll see these in the black-white decks, which can have a little bit higher ceiling, I think, because you're milling yourself with Overlord. But here, it's still very good. So that was a card I'm really excited to see. You're also seeing 4 Witch Enchanter, which typically in black-white, there's maybe 2. So that's definitely going to help when we're seeing a lot more show and tell and sneak and show, which has been showing up more.
Going back to the Clarion Conquerors, I don't really think that I had thought about it versus Tamio. But you're right, it does make a lot of sense there because it shuts off the clues, it shuts off the Tamio if it flips, it can block the Tamio. Yeah, I guess it does a lot. Canoptic Scarab Swarm, that card's so sick. It's always so cool when that card shows up. Yeah, going back to Thalia, I remember when Thalia was the staple, and then it's like, okay, card completely disappeared. So it's cool having it back. Like this deck feels like a blast from the past, and it's kind of cool having it back.
Yeah. It really makes sense leaning on Thalia here when you're so aggressively, targeting your opponent's lands and limiting their mana. And plus, historically a bad matchup has been like Omnitail. Which you see a little bit with the Allurant deck, but Show and Tell, Omniscience, a lot of your stuff, like even if you put in a Witch Enchanter, they can win at instant speed, but Thalia can really limit that, which is so some other decks that we saw our friend Brady in second playing that
Yes.
Allurant and Show and Tell deck, which I took to FNM a few weeks ago, and I loved it.
Oh, that was the week I wasn't there.
Yeah. I had a great time. I honestly, there's a few events that we have coming up locally, and I'm definitely debating bringing that as a learn. I don't love the card Show and Tell, but if it's a way of getting a learn and play, I feel a little bit better about it. But,
Yeah,
if you
that's
want to
fair.
walk through that.
I'm a big fan of this deck.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually going to play it in the event myself. I ended up not being able to play in the event, which was very frustrating. They changed the start time of this one, and I did not realize. So historically, they start at 11 our time. This one started at 10. I was kind of back and forth on what I was going to play. About 10:15, I made my choice. I went to go register so I could like go take a shower and just kind of relax a bit until it started. And I was just like, where's the event? Why don't I see it in here? And it was like 14 minutes in progress already. Yeah, it was okay. I recovered. I had just enough time to shower and get to one of our local stores like 3 minutes before their scheduled Legacy Monthly, and I got second there. So like I recovered my day.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like this deck. I've played it now through 3 leagues, to a 4-1, a 4-1, and a 3-2. I think the deck's great, and it sounds like you agree. What do you like about it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. So Formidable Speaker is kind of what we're seeing is bringing this deck into light. And if you haven't seen it, which most people probably have at this point, but it's a 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, you can choose to discard a card, and if you do, get a creature card from your deck into your hand. It also has the clause on it. You pay 1, tap it, untap a permanent, which is huge. It's a little bit like, obviously it's secondary, but it's really helpful, which we'll get to in a second. But just having that as a 2-card combo with either Omniscience or Aloran to just end the game, especially with Aloran when you can do it at instant speed, really helpful. If you're playing against there's a lot of these Beanstalk decks with Leyline Binding that you can win in response to their Leyline Binding trigger, which is really helpful. Something that Brady has done differently than some of the other lists. I know Otaba posted a few 5-0s, and he is kind of the first one I saw playing this deck. Is you can, like Brady has 4 Omniscience, and you cut down on Lotus Petals, so he only has 2 Lotus Petals. And that is dedicating itself to, you're going to be the Show and Tell deck, you're going to win, you're just going full in on the combo, and you're going to have gas, like repeated gas, and then you're relying on either Omniscience with a Sararak or but like stock up to just refill you. He actually is on 3 Atraxa, which is interesting. A lot of the decks are playing 4 Atraxa, so he's down to 3 Atraxa, 4 Omniscience. I do really like the Emrakul as well. So one of the problems that the deck had is if the Sararak is countered and goes to your graveyard, it could be difficult to win. So having a second win condition with Emrakul, but also if you discard Emrakul to your Formidable Speaker, it'll shuffle your Sararak back into your deck. And some other people are playing like Eternal Witness, name of the pod, Eternal Witness, to have that same effect. But I like this as a similar loop that you can do.
I hadn't even thought about the discarding Emrakul. In my last league, I was playing the Eternal Witness, and I kind of like it because it also lets you jam a bit easier. Because like I had a game where I cast Show and Tell, it got countered, and then the next turn I just got to go Eternal Witness, Show and Tell. So it kind of just lets you jam,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just, so you get to play your Formidable Speaker, find your Ewed, and then buy back the Asarak. I really like this deck. I feel like we've had a history of different decks that have merged together, and a lot of times they're not always successful. And in this case, I feel like the plans just overlap so well. Because like Asarak kills with Allurin, like you said, it also kills with Omniscience, like you said. And then so like show and tell works with like so many different parts of the deck, but then you can also sometimes show and tell Allurin just to get it in faster. And then I think what's really nice is this is like the smallest Allurin package we've ever seen because you just need the one Asarak, but you back it up with the formidable speaker. But then like when you're not going for the Allurin, you can just find the Atraxa or the Emrakul, or in the sideboard games, you can just get the Harbinger. And it's just such a nice cohesive package. I feel like this deck looks like a joke, but plays out so well. And it's funny because I was watching some gameplay videos of other people, and I watched one, and I'm not going to say, I mean, I guess I can say the names. It doesn't really matter. But like, I watched Brian Cook did a video and he finished and he was like, okay, this was like better than I expected, but like this deck's obviously a joke. And then I watched Brian Koval play a video immediately afterwards and he's like, I think this deck is busted. And it's just like, I think it's hard to tell even when you're playing. Cause like, even in my first league with it, I was like, I can't really tell if I'm getting lucky or if the deck's really good, but like, I just like easily 4-1, which is like a small sample, but I was like, it's like, I don't know, everyone died pretty easily, but also in my loss, I got run over, which was actually to Jamie, who we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the deck is really good.
I agree. Actually, I was looking at Brady's results a little bit. And two of his losses were actually to the like in the finals, but again earlier in Swiss as well, were to the mono white Death and Taxes deck. Which, if that deck, I mean, it has 4 the disenchant creatures, Witch Enchanter. So that's really big here. And also, Swords of Plowshares can be tough if you're trying to combo off with a Serac and you have that trigger on the stack and they swords your Serac. Veil of Summer doesn't stop that. You have to have specifically Force of Will. So there's a little bit more interaction there, which puts those white control-y decks in a good spot against here. But one thing I really like about the Formidable Speaker's that untap ability, it fixes your mana. And it can boost you with and give you a little bit more mana as well with Ancient Tomb. Painful, but it really helps you bridge that gap. But this deck, it just slams Show and Tell. If they counter it next turn, you just slam Allurin and you just keep going until they're out of counter spells. And that is powerful and proactive, which is a recipe for success.
And I really think this deck actually fixes some of the issues with the old blue-green Omnitel list because you're just more threat dense. And it's funny because on the surface, like I said, I think you look at it and it looks less refined because it's like, okay, like you have so much going on. But I just think it's so strong because you just get to go, okay, it's turn 2. I'm going to slam a threat every turn until you die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really powerful. Atraxa is very impressive in this deck. Like what you said, how the threat density is so high. It felt like every time you land, whether it's showing and tell, usually just show and tell Atraxa, or it's Omniscience Atraxa, you just always found like, oh, there was my A+B in that Atraxa hit. So I'm definitely going to win next turn, even if you can deal with the Atraxa. Like I have another follow-up of a Allurin Asarak or something, which was strong.
Yeah. And the deck did well overall. So like obviously we saw Brady get second. Javier Dominguez got 9th, and a few other people piloted it as well. Their results were not as strong, but still overall, like getting a 2nd and a 9th place finish out of only 5 pilots on the deck is really good. I don't know that I want to spend that much time on every deck, but I do want to move on to the 3rd place deck as well. So in 3rd place, we have Demir Reanimator.
Right. It's not dead.
Yeah,
What is dead may never
it's
die.
supposed to be gone, but it keeps hanging around for some reason. Yeah, it's basically the deck that we already knew. But you just don't have Entombs. So like they're going heavier with like 4 Atraxas and they're discarding it with like Tainted Indulgences. And this one has just the Tainted Indulgence.
Yeah,
you can also,
the Bitter Triumphs are on the sideboard for this one, which is interesting. Sometimes you see one of those in the main deck as an additional discard outlet.
Yeah, you can also attack with Barrogoyf and flip something over. And you can also do the Brainstorm Surveil trick where you like fetch for a surveil, hold priority, brainstorm, put the tracks on top. But yeah, this deck is still here.
Yeah, still here. It's playing 4 tracks, so 1 Archon, so a higher density of those big creatures to flip over with your surveil lands, but still here, still strong. Make sure you pack your graveyard heat, which I played against this on Friday at FNM, and silly me left all my graveyard heat at home because nobody plays Reanimator anymore, and I lost. So don't be me. Bring your graveyard
Yeah.
heat.
It's also interesting. This deck did well, and I don't just mean this person, but like this strategy did well. There's different things you can play. Like this is actually what I lost to in the finals of my event yesterday as
Yep,
well.
same opponent.
And you can have so that person has chart of course. They have bone shards, but you can also have careful study, which is interesting. Careful study and chart of course are both interesting because they flip cameo while being discard outlets. Or also, if you don't want to discard, you can just attack with your cameo and draw 2. But I don't know. But this deck did well, and Demir Tempo, which we thought was like the best deck coming into this event, did kind of abysmal.
Right. Like it had some postings in other challenges throughout the weekend, but this specific event, there's a few more in the top 32. It's only one. Am I missing one? I only see one. In 19th. But yeah, it really did not have a big showing. But some decks that did, 2 lands in the top 8. One with white for Source of Plowshares, 1 mono green with Rumble. How do you feel about that, being a lands expert over there?
So, one, I think you know that I definitely don't consider myself a lands expert at all. In fact, I would say that I am not even a particularly good lands player.
A hopeful lands expert.
Sure. So let me pull up one of those as well. So yeah, I think lands is a relatively decent choice. Historically, it's good into the tempo decks. I do think like you have to know what you're doing, which I mean is always true when you play Magic, right? But like I don't think lands is the world's easiest deck to just pick up and go. But if it is favored into those tempo decks and you expect to see a lot of them, like that's a good place to be. I think it's decent into Eldrazi, which has also been pretty popular lately. And those are 2 decks you expect to see a lot in these showcase events. Having access to all the disruptor flutes, they're not really playing endurance right now, but having access to crop rotation for Bajuka Bog against like the oops stacks is really nice. And you can actually, it's funny, if you look at the sideboards for this deck, like it's a lot of anti-combo stuff, right? The Damping Spheres, the 4 Disruptor Flutes. The Force of Vigor doesn't do anything against Oops unless they have the Belcher plan. But the Grafdigger's Cage and Fairy Macabre, they're going really hard on combo on the sideboard, but just planning for all of this fair stuff in the main deck. And I think that is a reasonable place to be. I've actually been playing green white depths again lately, which I would call myself I would call myself a depths expert, which you would think would overlap with lands, but
Surprisingly different.
I mean, I do play lands. I think I'm fine at it, but and I think depths is good right now for a lot of the same reasons, where you can kind of prey on these fair decks and just kind of hope that the fair decks have preyed on the combo decks.
Right. I see it as attacking the metagame in a very similar way that Death and Taxes does, where you have the Nev ability. In a fair matchups, you're going to do really well. Then you have 15 cards in your sideboard, or 14 in the case of Death and Taxes, that you bring in against combo. So you see Deafening Silence for Death and Taxes. You see 4 Disruptor Flutes here. Like you know what you're going to struggle against, and you commit wholeheartedly in your sideboard to trying to even that matchup a little bit.
Trying to think. What else did well in this event?
There's a few energy decks. So there's the red-white energy that was 6th, then another one in 17th.
Yeah, so the energy is
Which is
interesting
impressive.
because energy actually didn't do well overall. Like you had a few people do well, but the deck did pretty bad, if I remember. So as always, Joe Dyer did the data collection. Yeah, Mardu Energy had a -1 percentage. It was like 47%.
Yeah, which if you know that one player went 8-2 and it still had that low of a win percentage, it did not go well for many other people.
Yeah, well,
Boy.
the 8-2 player, was that the Boros or Mardu?
Boros. Mardu
So-
with a little bit less.
Boros actually got separated, and he was the only, they were the only Boros player. So they did well, but all the Mardu players did not.
Yeah, that can make sense. They are playing 3 Hexing Squelcher, and for Voice of Victory, which is interesting. I know some people are playing with the split there because they're similar effects, just to stop counter magic. But Hexing Squelcher has a little bit of a benefit of making it more painful for other creatures to be removed, while Voice of Victory can hit for a little bit more and give you a little bit more energy with the tokens. So that was
Yeah.
interesting there.
Personally, I like Voice of Victory more. It also works better with Goblin Bombardment,
Yes.
giving you extra things to sack every turn. It is better for a Johnny. I think Voice of Victory synergizes very well with the rest of the deck. I don't think the Hexing Squelcher is doing anything that you really need. Because I actually think that them not interacting on your turn, while it's very similar to like your stuff can't be countered, I think it is meaningfully better because I think one of the big things that you're getting out of the Voice of Victory is just them not being able to target whatever you put Guide of Souls counters on.
Yeah. I know rounding out the top 8 here, we had an Affinity deck, which did actually have a card with Affinity, which is great. Memory guarded. So I can't call it an Affinity deck, which I know you're a fan of that deck as well. It's cool to see it still posting some good results. It feels like it's underplayed, but still very powerful because you can still have those turn 1, turn 2 Kappa Cannon in your hands that have force backup and you just run over your opponent. It doesn't matter what they're doing. And then a Sneak and Show deck too, which we're seeing definitely come back in full force. Interesting that Sneak and Show is so popular right now. When Omni Show was really popular for a little bit, especially when Stock Up was printed, and now it's Sneak and Show. Kind of maybe it is just the increase in threat density where you have the sneak attack. What are your thoughts on that, on sneak attack versus
So
Omni Show?
I think part of it too is actually a lot of them have picked up Hexing Squelcher. And I think that card is kind of nuts in that deck because you don't want to have removal because like your fatal pushes aren't hitting anything else. But I've definitely lost games where to Sneak where I just had this hand that was like Force Negation, Flusterstorm, Force of Will, 2 other counter spells, like a blue card, and I'm just like, sick. I can never lose. And then my opponent just goes, Hexing Squelcher kill you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're seeing that in the Storm decks too. It's tough. You feel like you can never lose, that all of a sudden that little 2/2 creature is the death of you. Yeah, there's 3 Hexing Squelcher on the sideboard there. Another benefit that red brings is the creature removal too. So as I was putting together and looking at different lists with the Allure and Show and Tell deck, it can be difficult to answer permanents. So if somebody puts something in play, whether it's, a Meddling Mage, which doesn't see very much play, or something along those lines, maybe a Lavinia, it could be difficult to answer those. So having some of that, a Braid, another really good one for Disruptor Flutes, having some of those answers is really strong. And Magus to the Moon, there's always the chance that you just turn 1 Magus to the Moon and win.
Yeah. So I think it's worth just quickly going over some of the data for this event. It looks like the macro archetypes that kind of did the best. Bio decks were number 1 at 60%. Yes, I know, your favorite. Graveyard Strategies, close second at like 59.68. A much smaller sample size, there are about 8 players there, as opposed to 12. So I guess not that much smaller. And then like Permanent Combo and Stompy did well. Land-based, Fair, Greens Uncinas at about 51%. But then just like breaking it down a little bit more, just decks that actually had a reasonable number of pilots that did well do include Affinity, which we kind of shouted out. I still think the deck's great. I'm not a big fan of Memory Guardian personally, and a lot of people have cut Chalice. I think just going Ancient Tomb Chalice on one just gives you so many free wins. So when I play it, I'm still a Chalice believer, but teach their own. And then Eldrazi did pretty well. Death and Taxes did very well, which is not surprising since we already said File was like the best performing deck. Yeah, and those were kind of and the Lauren deck did quite well. And those were some of the standout decks for this event.
Yeah, all in all, very diverse. A lot of different macro archetypes are represented. You see combo, you see control, artifact to stop your affinity. I mean, it's almost aggressive. Maybe it's tempo or something, but you're seeing a lot of different archetypes, which is great. I think Legacy's in a great spot. At least, like personally, I love it, and I feel like you can bring a lot of different decks, have a good time, and do well. It kind of reminds me of like 2015 Legacy a little bit. That was when like Treasure Cruise was around, but you had like show and tell decks that were doing that. You had Miracle decks, you had Maverick decks, but then you still had your Death and Taxes and a lot of different diversity there. Then I think that's when Grixis Delver was really big too, which was a fun deck, except for Cataxian Probe. I don't like that card. It's like, because I think it's some of the Thoughtseize where it's like you keep a hand and you're like, I probably shouldn't keep this. And then your opponent goes, Cataxian Probe. Like, that's even more embarrassing now. It's like, I know I shouldn't keep this, but here you go. You take a look.
Yeah, I am a known probe hater. I do agree with you. I think the format's pretty good right now. I've been playing a number of different decks, just kind of messing around, having fun. And there's plenty of decks we didn't even talk about
Mhm.
today that I've seen getting play. Like we didn't talk about Cradle Control. There's actually been a green black Moon Shadow Hogak deck that's been putting up results in
I saw
leagues
that.
lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might get run through a league today. I'm kind of curious to see how that one goes. I
Mhm.
I also think there's a lot to explore still in the format, and I'll be curious to see, does Demir Tempo come back? I mean, not to say it's gone, but like it did pour. So are people going to adjust? Or is it going to go on a downswing? Or are people going to keep playing it? Maybe this event was a fluke, but maybe it's a sign people are finally prepared. I think it's hard to tell. So before we move on to some modern, you have an event for big stakes tomorrow. You have access to everything. What are you playing?
That's a tough one because I love playing Esravile. So a deck has to be really good and really fun for me to want to play something else. But if I am just there to win, I think I would pick up that Allure and Show and Tell deck, and that's what I would take. Something very similar to what Brady brought with more omniscience in there. When I played it, I played 3 speakers. I would probably go back up to 4 of that card as well. And I think that's what I would bring. What would you bring?
I would actually bring the same deck.
Nice.
It was what I was, like I said, it was what I was planning to play in the
Mhm.
showcase challenge. I do think playing it online and having to combo, I had to combo for the first time
Oh,
yesterday,
yeah.
and that was not my favorite thing. So if it was an online event, I might stick to either Affinity or Green White Depths.
Yeah, I think
I'm
the
just not a,
key. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say Death and Taxes is obviously a strong choice, but I don't have the experience, so I wouldn't want to touch that.
Yeah.
I think Green White Depths is likely where I would land if I wasn't playing the Learn deck. And also, most people don't make you combo, so feel safe playing it online. I've played now 15 matches, and I've only had to click through the combo once, and I was able to do it in time. It did just kind of suck, and I think wasted 6 minutes for everyone though.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be tough. I think a key there is you don't have to let your other room triggers resolve, which can definitely help. So you can just do your combo and only resolve the dark room or whatever, the one that makes your opponent lose 1 life. But it still takes a solid time clicking through the dungeon every time, selecting which room in person, much quicker.
Well,
I
they
do
have
want to
to
point out,
resolve eventually.
no. So as it comes into play, it bounces. So
Yeah.
the room trigger still on the stack and a Cererex in your hand again. So as the room, you can not let the room trigger resolve and then put a Cererex into play. So that you just go to the next room and that initial room trigger is still on the stack. So you can win with 70 room triggers still on the stack, and only resolving the one
No,
that makes your
because when
opponent lose 1 life.
they go to resolve, it'll still go through all of those room triggers.
So you resolve the trigger to go to the next room, but not the trigger for the room ability actually happening because there's 2 triggers there.
I feel like that's not what it was letting me do, but maybe I'd clicked auto yield.
It could be, which can be important because one of the room makes you draw a card. So if you, for some reason, don't have enough cards in your deck or if you have less than 20 cards in your deck, you can still win if you respond to that trigger, which is something specifically Serac does because it's also the same ability to return, which is cool.
I had
There
like
was
40
also,
cards left in my
yeah.
deck. You can also make treasure every time you go through. And at some
Mhm.
point I was like, maybe I'll just cast Atraxa and then pass.
Yeah. I think one of them makes a 1/1 too. So if you need to make a bunch of 1/1s, you could just do that.
It does, but they had Tampiao, so
Yeah. It doesn't matter. There were 4 Oops All Spells players also in the top 32 I wanted to note, which not a ton, but it's still there, still floating around. That's something you're mostly only going to see online. You don't see a whole
yeah,
lot of that in paper.
that deck also did well, unfortunately.
All right. Anything else you want to point out from the Legacy event?
No, I think we can talk some modern.
Sweet. So the Modern event also looking pretty good, honestly, which 2 good formats. I'm a fan. So this one, walking through the top 8 a little bit, we have 2 Goryo's Vengeance pilots that made it to the finals. Then we have Mill, interesting. And in 4th, we have Affinity, which this one isn't really Affinity. It doesn't have any Affinity cards. We have Boros Energy, Dimir Control, Boros Energy, Dimir Control. The Dimir Control decks are kind of like this blue-black flash, like Bowmaster. One of them, a Snapcaster Mage, I think, they look pretty fun. Little Kaito, very similar to the Legacy deck. So what are your thoughts here?
So first I do want to touch on Goryo's, because watching that deck get first and second is just like very impressive and has to be acknowledged.
Hmm.
Notably, the two decks are actually like somewhat different, which is cool. It's nice seeing the variety. But there's still the decks that and this is a deck that, personally I've played a fair bit with, and I do think it's really good. The big difference is like we're looking at the list at one right now. It does not have any Quantum Riddlers, where I know the person in second place does have the Quantum Riddler. And I think that's kind of a very big question. And then the first place list has Philology Archaeologist again.
Mm.
And so I know I've played the list with and without Philology, and when I didn't have it, it felt so much harder to find things. So I kind of like this approach where they're kind of a little bit more all in on the combo, right? They have the Ulamog as an extra creature to Goryo's that often ends the game on the spot. And so I really like this more all in combo approach. And this is somebody who has been playing the deck for ages. Going back to like when I got second at an SCG with this deck, I know this is the list I copied, and that was like 2 years ago. So they have been on this deck nonstop. The second place list is, however, playing those Quantum Riddlers and going for a little bit more of a mid range angle.
Hmm. You see
And
that
so
with
they can
fatal
go
pushes
a
as
little bit
well in
longer.
that deck.
Yeah. So I like this version. I think there's definitely arguments to be playing the other. But do you kind of have thoughts on those differences or what you prefer?
So I typically prefer like the the mid range game plan with the combo finish. That would be the second place stack there with the Riddlers, a little bit more interaction, and then you kind of take your time to set up. It also has a Teferi in the deck, which I didn't see. I don't think the first place one has a Teferi. It does not. In the sideboard, it does. It also has the Riddlers in the sideboard, which is interesting. So it's like game one, you know what you're doing. You're comboing, and then depending on what your opponent does, if they bring in a bunch of graveyard hate, you can kind of go to that mid range ephemerate blink game plan. But typically, I like to be a little bit more have a diverse strategy, so you can attack whichever weakness you spot first in your opponent, whether it's comboing or just putting a big 4/6 flyer into play on turn 3 with ephemerate. That's typically the approach I like to do. But both of these, obviously, they made to the finals. I think they're the only two Goryo's decks in the top 32 that I see, which is impressive that they made it up that far and they both made it to the finals.
I'm just like looking at this deck. I just can't get behind. Like, I know that the Quantum Riddler ephemerate stuff is strong. I've done it before, but it just feels so disjointed to me. Notably, I do want to point out a friend of ours actually at our locals has been playing this deck. They've been playing a copy. Well, I don't know how many copies of Superior Spider-Man. So I will say I saw these and I just immediately was like, okay, are they playing that card? Which they're not, but I kind of like that as a cool piece of interaction as well.
Yeah, I played against them last week on Monday for our little modern locals. I typically play the blue-green ritual deck, which I know Mapson is a huge fan of, specifically Harbinger of the Seas. One of his favorite cards, actually. He won't let you know that, but it is. And it was difficult. It was Superior Spider-Man was very, very good there. Whether it's evoking a solitude, killing something, bring that in later as a solitude. Myself playing the ritual deck, I also play Riddlers in that deck. And if you warp in a Riddler, sacrifice it to ritual, and then my opponent then plays Superior Spider-Man copying my Riddler later on, it feels pretty bad. So that card looked very, very good. And I actually do need to pick up a copy or two. Likely to try it in Legacy, but it looked very good.
I think I don't know how many I have, but I have one or two if you just want to try it out first. I don't think
Right.
it's that expensive, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can't find it off Recruiter, but I can find it off Formidable Speaker, which I tried out last week in Legacy. My little 4-color vial deck was sweet.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk about for an hour just about Formidable Speaker. So
I love it. Double Aether Vial activations? Sign me up. Where my opponent attacked with Tamiyo, and then I untapped my flying blocker, which was on board, but still, I got to block their Tamiyo. It was fun, very fun for me, at least.
So the rest of this top 8, like, it's funny because it is diverse and I like that, but it also don't really feel like there's anything that interesting going on. I really like Affinity, if you couldn't guess from the fact that I also really like it in Legacy. And I do think the addition of Arcbound Ravager has been kind of cool, where you can like sack everything to that, or like you can sack your weapons manufacturing stuff to that, or you can sack your Pinnacle Emissary guys and then put the counters on like a Cappy Cannoneer after you attack. So I do think that gives a lot of neat tricks and it's cool, but it's also like not anything new.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that because I haven't been keeping up with Affinity decks in Modern, and if Arcbound Ravager is just new for this event or has kind of been seeing a little bit of a resurgence there, because obviously huge back in the day, but it's cool to see it returning to power a little bit, just with all the different synergies, like you said, with weapons manufacturing and all the different tokens you're making with Pinnacle Emissary.
Yeah, I still need to get my copies for in-person play, and I think 2 more copies of weapons manufacturing. But yeah, no, it's been showing up. The Affinity deck is kind of interesting because I think it's actually had a lot of different versions over the past few months. Like you've had some people who are just like, the weapons manufacturing stuff sucks. I'm just not playing any of it. You have people who are like, Emery sucks. I'm not playing that. You've had people, you've Salvage Titan,
Mhm.
just every time I see makes me think of the old Greg Hatch deck tech. If people don't know what I'm talking about, you should definitely I assume you can just YouTube Greg Hatch deck tech
More likely,
SCG,
yeah.
and you'll find some bangers. You know the deck I'm talking about, right?
Yes, I do. It's good.
Yeah, but yeah, I do think it's interesting because I'm not sure what the best affinity list looks like because there is that variety. And I do think all the different things it's doing are cool, but at this point, like, we've seen them.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, in the top 8, you got 2 blue black, 2 energy, 2 Gorios, Mill, which I feel like Mill has the potential of just spiking a tournament occasionally, but you don't see it played very often, and it's always really scary to play against.
I didn't
So
look at the mill deck. Okay, it looks
it's pretty
stock
standard from what
mill.
I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like basically exactly what you would expect.
Hmm.
What I do think is interesting is there's no amulet in this top 8. And,
Yes.
there's 1 in 12, so it's not that far below, but, and there's a few more in the top 32, but not seeing amulet is a bit of a bummer, even though it's probably a good thing.
Probably a good thing for your sake of not getting it banned.
Yeah, and I know it's still won at least one of the challenges this weekend, so it's not like it's gone anywhere. Just Guy Control in ninth place is like kind of fun.
Hmm.
Just like a neat little soul type mid range deck in 10th. I don't know if you feel this way about Modern. It's interesting to me. I think the format's good right now. I think it's very diverse. I think there's a lot going on, but I also just think it's kind of boring. Like I feel like it's been the same format that we've had for months and months and months. And I'm not somebody who needs a format to change every day or anything, but like I just feel like I can pull up an Amulet Titan list that I played like 6 months ago and just run it back, no changes, and have like my sideboard still be good, like my main deck well configured, and I just think you can do that for most archetypes. And maybe it's a good sign because like there's just a bunch of decks that are all performing well and there is variety and like you're not seeing the same deck 5 times in an event. But I'm just kind of like,
Yeah, I see that. Modern is an interesting format where I think the top is so powerful, especially all these Modern Horizons 3 cards. They're so powerful, and where you can see where you can get some of the diversity and maybe make a little bit more fun for yourself is just making small changes to the already powerful decks. So like you see, like trying 2 different variants of Gorios in the finals there, and that is where you can find your fun. At least that's kind of where I've been in that format. That's what I've been doing. I've been trying that ritual deck with a few different combinations of creatures, like what is that creature called? The 2 mana 1/3. I can find it here in a second.
Oracle of
Tragedy,
Tragedies?
Oracle Tragedy. That's a card I've been trying out in the ritual deck to a lot of success. It's been very good. But like you said, the top is so powerful that it's good that it's not just 1 or 2 decks. It's a few different decks that go back and forth. But those decks are very powerful for a reason, and they're all very strong from the new printings. You're going to see a lot of the same 5 or 6 decks, but you can make a little bit of changes here or there to get a little bit of variance that you're looking for.
And it's funny because I actually, even though I'm kind of bored of it, like I do think it is actually sort of a good thing
Hmm.
because I just remember years ago, people would be like, oh, Modern's the format where you can buy a deck and it'll be good for ages.
Hmm.
And like people would say that. And then all the Modern Horizon stuff happened and that seemed to not be true anymore. And I do wonder, like, maybe we're going to get back to a point where that is true. And if that is true, like, that is probably a good thing. Like, I think I'm just like, I've gotten used to like the constant change, but I have It's funny because standard, I feel like, has changed a bunch over the past few months, mainly because of bans. And every time it changes, I'm like,
Mhm.
I have to learn a new format.
That is interesting, especially like modern right now is kind of the format that it changes. It's going to be stagnant until the next Modern Horizon set comes out because that's when all the new powerful cards. Some of that may be because the Universes Beyond sets are now going through standard. So some of those previous really powerful cards, like the Lord of the Rings cards that you saw, that would really shake up the format, they're now powered down a little bit, whether it's like Spider-Man or some of the Marvel sets that are coming through standard, limiting some of the higher level power levels. So you're only seeing 1 or 2 cards come through, less of those direct to modern, direct to legacy new sets, which I love. I think it's a great idea to maybe power everything down a little bit. You get 1 or 2 cards a set that you can really be excited, really try out. Some of them hit, some of them don't. Like in this case, we saw Wang Shitong in the Demir lists, but not a ton of other new cards, which is good. It leads to more of a constant format that, I mean, yes, you don't get to change your deck every week or two just to have like keep up with the meta, but also if you are someone that only plays every 4 months or every 6 months, you can bring that deck that you played 6 months ago and bring it and expect to, like, maybe it's not, the absolute cutting edge of technology, but it's going to be something that you still have access to.
Yeah, it is a good thing. And, with modern RCQ season coming up shortly, it'll be good for people who haven't played for a while to be able to just come back and kind of know what's going on. Personally, I'm going to try to get some brewing in between now and then. I've got some ideas in mind.
Like
You've
Amulet
already
Brewing
seen
or
me
something way different? No, you're talking like your
way
Badger Mole
different.
Cup?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, you've already seen me playing some formidable speaker decks.
Yeah.
So I played, for the listeners, I played a Vanifar combo deck, which we haven't seen a Vanifar combo deck do well in over a year. Like, it literally didn't, Prime Speaker Vanifar did not appear in a single 5-0 list in the past year. So
That's how you know you're on the right track.
it was a bit of a throwback, but I did play that with Formidable Speaker and Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And honestly, it felt decent. Like, I would have to definitely play more games, but I think, one Formidable Speaker lets you tutor up a Vanifar, and this did come up, if you have a Cauldron in play and a Vanifar in hand, you can pitch the Vanifar to the Formidable Speaker, and then if you have any other creature in play, you can just activate your Cauldron and start going off immediately. So it's like kind of a way to tutor it to your graveyard or tutor it to your hand, depending on what is appropriate. And also, notably, if they somehow break up your whatever combo you're trying to use, I don't really know how this would happen. I guess like a consign to memory, you can actually just use the Formidable Speaker to untap the Vanifar and go off again, which that didn't come up, but like is an interesting thing to note. And then I also tried a Devoted Druid Formidable Speaker deck on last week,
Were you playing
and
Tyvar in that deck?
I was not playing
Okay.
Tyvar, and it's
I'm a
very
huge fan of
possible I
Tyvar.
should have.
Yeah.
That one was not as good. It was also a Cauldron deck, and Cauldron and Devoted Druid like kind of work together, but also don't at the same time. That was, I want to keep playing around with it. That one was like more reminiscent of the Badger Mole Cup decks in Standard right now, where you got to play with a bunch of mana dorks, and you got to play your Badger Mole Cub, and you had a Leyline of Abundance. So your mana dorks were already tapping for 2, and then if you have a Cub out, they're tapping for 3, and then you can just put that mana into the Leyline to pump everything and kill them.
Yeah, that looked very strong when I was watching you play that. Something I thought was really interesting that you did a few times is your opponent would go to interact with your Devoted Druid, and then you just kill it in response, make some mana, and then end up using your Agatha's Soul Cauldron just to get something similar back. So it was interesting to interact with that way. So it was a little bit, just resilient in that way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, from playing it, it did not feel that strong. I've seen it put up a few, like, I think it put up a challenge top 8, maybe, and then a challenge top 32 and like a 5-0 or 2 in leagues. I thought it would be something cool to try, and I had fun, and I'm happy I did it. And honestly, I will probably try it again. I do think I got a little bit of bad luck. Like, I played against Amulet, and my opponent, Trevor, a dear friend of both of ours, but man, screw him. He had turn 1 Amulet and Saga
Yeah, how does that
every
feel?
game.
Yeah, shout out to Trevor. He did give me this hat.
Yeah, he had it every game. I was like, can you just stop for a little bit? And like, I had the turn 3 kill, and I was like, "This is great." But then I'm just like, it's turn 2, and I'm looking at a Saga in chapter 2 and enable it and play, and I was like, "Well, I guess I have to interact with you and delay my own kill because otherwise I'm dead." And he was just like, still able to kill me first. Yeah.
Yeah, that amulet deck, pretty strong.
Yeah, who would
Especially
play something like that?
especially through Saga, where, like you said, it would be on chapter 2, and you know you're just dead next turn. And it's like, well, can I do anything? Does it matter what I do? Like they're getting, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So that's been fun to play with. And I really think Formidable Speaker and Agatha Soul Cauldron is just a really powerful engine. And maybe I'm overhyping it in my head because you do have to have the card in your hand that you want. Spoiler alert for today. I don't know if you're planning to go to our modern event this afternoon, but I think I'm gonna run back the old Bant Urza decks.
Well, those were so much fun.
Yeah, and I think Formidable Speaker might be good in
Hmm.
there. It's awkward because there's not really enough room to fit Speaker and Cauldron, but I do think like Speaker in your Thopter Sword deck, where maybe you can discard your Sword of the Meek if you have it, and you can find your Urza is like kind of nice. So I'm just or like being able to untap Emery and get 2 Mistress Bobble activation seems
Yeah,
good.
or even the value of discarding something to speak or getting it back with Emery, just making it so that that discard can be helpful, which is something that, like I said, I was playing Speaker a little bit in Legacy, and if you can provide that discard as a way to generate an engine as opposed to just the downside, it can be really huge. I know some people were playing a 4-color vial list that had Abdul Adrian and the Animate Dead combo in it, so you can kind of discard the Abdul Adrian to the speaker or something like that. But that's a little bit more roundabout. But yeah,
By
I've been
some people,
really
do you mean
impressed.
you?
I did not. No, it was some other people in the Aether Vial Discord. Or Esper Vial Discord. And I was doing Feldar Guardian and Abdul Adrian and Ephemerate, which is a little bit more convoluted and a little bit more wonky, but it was still a ton of fun. I didn't actually get to do the combo at all, but just Feldar Guardian flickering my Overlord or Abdul Adrian being another Yorion type effect was a lot of fun, especially if you have Krakus and you just bounce it back and forth. But yeah, that's my own jank for Legacy.
Okay. Well, I feel like we have kind of talked about everything
Yeah.
we
I don't know
came
if
to
you
talk
wanted
about.
to shout out your recent tournament result. You mentioned it very briefly, but you did play in a paper tournament yesterday, and it sounds like you made the finals. So I don't know if there's any like quick things you wanted to say about that, or about what deck you played and what you played against.
Yeah, so I played Green White Depths. I've been playing it some lately. I got like top 4 in a different Legacy event a few weeks back with it. I like top 8 at a challenge with it last month, this month. I think the deck's good again. It's very similar to what I played before. I'm playing straight green white this time. I'm not playing the red for Pyroblast or Minskimbu. I'm not sure if that's correct. I think the red might need to come back with these show and tell decks being on the rise. And there's been a lot of tests, and getting the snag and echo of Aeons is really, really strong. I've actually been playing some tests lately myself, and every time my opponent Pyroblast me, I get so upset. But it's been nice playing against all these tempo decks and just having such a solid plan against them. I don't know, Swords to Plowshares is a good card.
I'm a
I've been playing
big fan of Source of Plowshares.
with 3 Scythecat Cub and 2 Badgermole Cub, and Scythecat Cub hits so hard in this deck because it's just so easy to get 2 land drops. Because even when you don't have a fetch land, you can still just play land and activate Elvish Reclaimer or activate Knight of the Reliquary. And then with Badgermole Cub, I've been pretty impressed as well, especially like getting to put the Earthbend on like Flatstones of Trocaire and then sack Flagstones to Elvish Reclaimer. And then it's like you get a landfall trigger when the Flagstones comes back from Earthbend, and then you get a Flagstone trigger from, or a land from the planes that you get, and then you get to actually resolve the search and you get a third land. So you get like three triggers for your Scythecat Cub if you have one in play. And also it's just okay, now I found my Thespian Sage, and now I can untap and I have a bunch of mana still, because yes, you're giving up the fact that it taps for 2, but because it's a Flagstones, you're getting a second land anyway, so now you have those Flagstones to turn around and get a second Plains and your Dark Depths. And so that's been just really strong. A lot of people aren't playing Sylvan Library right now. A lot of people have cut it in favor of Once Upon a Time. I just consistently find that card underwhelming in green white depths, and I consistently find Sylvan Library to be exceptional. People are like, "Oh, it's so slow." And it's like you're playing it on turn one a lot of the time. Like, I don't know, like if you pay 8 once, then it's really good. People are like, "What about Orcish Bowmasters?" Which I actually don't see that card a ton, and if they put an Orcish Bowmasters in play, you just don't use the Sylvan Library.
Yeah, the Civil Library, it's really not much of a downside. Like, if you need the cards, then what's one more damage? 5 damage instead of 4, or I guess 6 because you'd be looking at 2 more. But yeah, you just choose not to activate. It's not like they have something that's going to punish it. Yeah, so that seems fine.
Yeah, and I've just had so many games where I just like cast it on turn one and my opponent has a Tameo and I'm able to keep up with the card advantage easily because I have a library and not only do I have the same number of cards, but I got to pick my cards. And yeah, it's been really good. It's been really good into the Tameo decks. Having prismatic ending is really strong. I'm just letting cameos flip and kind of ignoring them until they're on 6, at which point I will attack it or I will ending it. And honestly, that's been working out for me fine. Yeah, the deck's just, it's been good. I don't know. It's funny because I've had people make comments like, yeah, I don't think the deck is good, but Mapson likes it. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I keep winning, and people are like, shouldn't you just play lands? I'm like, why? Like, maybe I'm handicapping myself and I don't see it, but it seems to be working.
Yeah, I think if it's working, keep sticking to it. You mentioned you haven't really been playing Minsk and Boo or anything recently, and you're sticking to green white. But have you played Minsk and Boo and Scythecap Cub together at all yet?
I have not yet,
Okay.
but it
That
does
seems
sound
sweet. Like
really
putting the counters on
exciting.
it because it has trample and then doubling them. I'm excited. Or even doubling the counters on the hamster and then throwing it.
Yeah,
But could be
and it's
interesting.
it's worth it's worth mentioning the card that I'm playing in kind of that Minsk and Boo slot is it's a way weaker card, and so I get that up front, but it has the upside of being easier on the mana, as Passing say. And so for those who don't know, it's a land. It produces green mana, comes into play tapped unless you have a basic land. You can pay 3 and tap it to Earthbend 1, which is or Earthbend 2, sorry, which is uh, not the world's strongest ability, but if you're playing against beans and they don't have Wasteland, they literally cannot answer this card. So you can
It's a
just,
good place to be. Yeah.
yeah, you can just Earthbend forever until they die. And yes, they could have Quantum Riddlers and they could kill you first. But also, you attack for 2, and then you attack for 4, and you attack for 6, and then you attack for, like,
Yeah.
you're just
That's very good.
adding pressure. You can also have times this has come up where you can rebuy a value lands. So I've had where you earthbend onto your Talon Gates of Madara, and then you sack that to Elvish Reclaimer. It comes back in, you get to phase something out again, you get another land, and then the next turn you can just set up to do it again. I've done it with Bajuka Bog, I've done
I
it
was
with
going to say that
Wasteland.
with Bajuka Bog is very strong, especially like historically, green white depths versus reanimator has always been a really good matchup because you just have ways of tutoring Bajuka Bog. But being able to do it multiple times completely shuts the door.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of the reanimator sickos are playing show and tell right now, but even sometimes that works out. Like actually round 2 yesterday, I played against blue black reanimator and my opponent show and telled in Atraxa. I removed it. Then they show and telled in Thalgavoth. I was able to kill it, or I think I bounced it, they cast another show and tell, put it back in. I was able to attack with a Merit Lage and they had to sack it. They reanimated it and I beat them putting Valgavoth into play like 3 times and it cracks.
Yeah, that's really good. I haven't seen Valgaboth in a little bit. That one's a little bit scary. Usually to answer that one, I have to solitude it or something. Like solitude it, sack the solitude and a bowmaster and the bowmaster token or something along those lines. But that's a scary creature right there. But at least it doesn't have the card advantage that Atraxa has. Like if that was Atraxa that they put in 3 times, it probably would have been a little bit of a different game.
I actually
Or
think it would
even
have been
Archon.
easier.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think that's usually the case for what it's worth, but like I had a Caracas in play and like I was
Oh, okay.
was at the point where I can make a Merit Lage without like casting spells. So just being able to just bounce it and move on. But like when I tried to bounce the Valgaloth, I had to sack like 2 Mox Diamonds and an Elfish Reclaimer.
Yeah, that's a little rough. Yeah,
Nice
Caracas has
little
been
5
very
for
good
1.
recently with all these Tameos flying around, show and tell, reanimator, that kind of thing. Caracas has been really good. Actually, I was watching Akala's stream the other day, and he played against Brian Koval, who's playing blue-black mid-range, it looked like. And he had a Krakus probably out of the sideboard just to deal with your opponent's, Tamios or whatever. In this case, it was to deal with Death and Taxes, which was quite interesting. So if it's worth bringing it out of the sideboard in a Bug Beans deck, then it's pretty good. I know a long time ago, maybe 2017, 2016, it was not uncommon for people to have just one crop rotation and a Krakus in the sideboard, which was always some interesting tech that I liked.
Yeah, I think you and I may have talked about this before, but I think Caracas is only going to get better and better because we're in this day and age where they design a lot for Commander. And, that is what it is. You can say it's good, you can say it's bad. Whatever it is, it's just a fact. They design a lot for Commander. With that, they design a lot of legendary creatures, and now they're doing a lot of Universes Beyond. And you can say that's good because it draws people into the game. You could say it's bad because it pushes Mark out of the game. But
Too soon.
regardless of what you say, a lot of those creatures are going to be legendary too. So if they end up being playable, you're just bringing more legendary creatures into the format, and Crocus is just going to get better and better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Crocus stocks are only going to go up. So, play the Crocus deck. Death and Taxes for Crocus. Where can you go wrong?
Okay. And on that note, I think we should get out of here. Usually we say where people can find us, but much like Mark, you're not a social media guy.
Yeah, I'm not really online. I'm on Discord a little bit as Dr. Catkin, but not really much of a Twitter person. So, or Blue Sky, whichever you may have. But yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, so people can follow me at Expedition Map, or you can follow the show at Eternal Witnesses Podcast. Pretty sure that's what it is. It's been a minute. Yeah. And with that, thank you for joining me this week and in future weeks. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye.